Hey, all you edu transformers, learner center practitioners tuning in from near and far. Very excited to bring in this new year. Obviously, the big talk of the new year is with AI and Chat GPT and what it can do for us. And I have brought on someone I've worked with in the past who I greatly admire and I think is revolutionizing the field and how he's using AI and Chat GPT and going to give a lot of insights to us. So, Christopher Bush, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you again. A very exciting time for educators in this new AI-driven space.
Yeah, very, very exciting time. So where are you tuning in from? You sound like you got an accent.
Yeah, I'm in a place called Wye River, which is a few hours south of Melbourne in the Southern Hemisphere. So we're enjoying our long summer break as teachers at the moment, and trying to recharge the batteries on the beach for another year in school land.
Okay, I'm sure everybody in the Northern Hemisphere is very jealous of your break right now, but that they just came back from a break, so don't worry. They'll be getting another one soon. But before we head into AI, right? Because I think that's the big talk, and I want to kind of take a step back because I think this is, as anything, I do think it's, as you probably would agree, it's going to be revolutionize the way we do things in classrooms. But it's got to be connected, right, to a bigger goal. And I know that you are really big on making students kind of active participants, developing these kind of student-centered project-based experiences. So I'd love to hear how you kind of fell in love with, giving students more ownership and, what the result was that you saw in your classroom.
Yeah, I think the thing that you've said there, talking about the bigger goal and the big purpose of schools. I mean, what is it that we do with the precious time that we get with these young people, 6 hours a day for 12 years of their life? And schools were feeling so irrelevant to me, and that my work as a teacher felt like you were involved in this knowledge transmission that's really redundant and really defunct. And I think so many educators feel that way about the old way of teaching and learning. And so for me, my big shift happened when we started embracing project-based learning with our 15-year-old learners at the time where across the world, our young learners are perhaps likely to disengage from school. Some people say it's because of puberty. I think that's a part of it, but I think a huge part is they start to become pretty aware that the things that we make them sit through day after day are pointless, and that they are so disconnected from their lived experience, from their passions and their interests and their life's greater direction. And so for me, project-based learning was a way that student passions and interests and curiosities could drive the curriculum, could drive their time at school in a way that made the whole experience more rewarding, not only for them, but for their educators as well.
Wow. Okay, so could you quickly just take me through what was like a most memorable experience that you had with these 15-year-olds?
In Australia, one of the biggest challenges we have is facing up to our colonial past. And that area of history, that area of the past is incredibly sensitive, and so sensitive that often educators avoid addressing it. One of our most successful project-based learning experiences was when the young people and their questions and their curiosities were really driving a project that explored the past of their own families, but also the land on which our school now sits. To do that through project-based learning meant that each group of young people, their individual curiosities could help them to delve into that past in a way that was sensitive, but also in a way that was highly connected with the questions and the curiosities that they had. I've got no doubt that if we were trying to do this in a more didactic, traditional approach, the learning wouldn't have been as sticky, as resonant. And I know that because of the discoveries that the young people made, the connections they had with Indigenous members of our community, the research they were able to do in the real world, that made that learning profound and shifted their perspective and understanding of not only their place, but also the school's place in our
Mm.
world.
And I understand they actually, as you mentioned, they connected with some of the indigenous or the tribes of that region, and there's some blessing of your school for maybe the very first time, which was important.
Yeah, we were incredibly lucky to have an Indigenous elder at the culmination of our project-based learning unit come to our school and perform a traditional smoking ceremony and a welcome to country. And this is something that had not happened at our school before because it was a new school, but it was incredibly significant as it's a blessing to be on the land and to learn on the land and with the land. And so the project-based learning culminated in this wonderful ceremony, but these Indigenous elders were involved throughout the project at each stage of the project. So the walls of the school were permeating and allowing in these external experts into the school. And I think that's a real gift that project-based learning provides, is that the teachers are not expected to be the holders of all the wisdom and the knowledge.
Mm.
We really value having these experts and other perspectives share the space in learning and teaching with the young people.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I think that's, that transformation, I think a lot of teachers are trying to make, are hoping to make. And, I think it's a good transition or segue into, the barriers, I guess, for a lot of people for project-based learning is this time factor. And, a lot of them aren't given this time, this collaborative planning time, making those connections with the community, making those connections with other teachers, with their curriculum. And, out on the scene is this new AI, Chat GPT. And I'd love to hear, before we dive a little bit more into it, like, how is that making things easier, would you say? And is it like removing some of these barriers for people doing these experiences?
Yeah, I think there are so many educators around the world would love to do project-based learning all the time. They recognize how valuable it is, but as you say, the barrier is time or effort or not knowing how to bring about this new way of pedagogy. And with AI, we now all, with a few clicks and a few keystrokes, have access to leading experts around the world, not only in how to make project-based learning activities, but any sort of educational activities, any sort of physiotherapy or chef questions. All these questions can be demystified and taught with a remarkable expert of Chat GPT. And
Mm.
so I've been profoundly mind blown, impressed at Chat GPT's ability to plan engaging, relevant, exciting content for my students. And I would love to be able to share more widely the gifts that ChatGPT can bring to us all as educators. So we're
Mm.
not up late at night planning lessons for the next day or spending our holidays planning a unit of work. These planning things that used to take us days or weeks really now can happen in minutes.
All right. And I suggest everybody who's listening to this episode, it might be handy as well if you're watching this, because I'm going to put it out as a video as well, because we're going to kind of dive into actually how to use ChatGPT to plan your own experience. But before we do that, what is something that ChatGPT has helped you act as a co-pilot that's helped you plan for this year, Chris?
ChatGPT and look, other AI applications have allowed me to clone myself as a AI version of myself as an economics tutor. This is something that I implemented 6 months ago with my senior students. I essentially taught ChatGPT my entire breadth of knowledge. I emptied in my Dropbox folder of economics material and I cloned myself into an AI version that my students could interact with, could question, no matter the time of day, no matter where they were. And I was really impressed to see that when their final results came out at the end of the year and they'd graduated, that the mean and median scores were 5 points higher than they had been the previous year. Now, obviously, lots changes between cohorts, but I have little doubt, and the young people tell me how much they were using the AI version of me, that having
Hmm.
access to 24/7 tutor was a profound gift to them and allowing them to do better than the previous cohort.
Wow. Okay, so they took an exam at the end, and you said they increased in terms of their score. So because this is a big worry for teachers is, you know, the students just programming something in ChatGPT, it doing all the work for them. But you are a tutor, so that when they went to ChatGPT, they're asking you these questions based off of kind of the knowledge that you inputted.
That's right. And you teach the AI how to respond to students' questions. So you teach it to respond patiently, calmly, with different examples. And then you release it to your young people. And I had them question it and test it. And we discussed together whether we thought the answers it was giving were as good as what I could give as a human. And I was so impressed to see that when I was spending time one-on-one with a student in a revision class, I would look over my shoulder and I would see 6, 7, 8 other the students on this robot version of me asking it questions to revise. Now, our educational system is so broken in that so often it just tests how well can you rote learn and remember facts and statistics and regurgitate them under a pressure exam situation. And so until the system changes, we need to look for ways to allow our young people to succeed in that scenario. And if an AI version of me can help them better remember facts and figures and regurgitate them, then that I think is a huge gift that we can give to them. And it's a great equalizer as well. Instead of having to pay hundreds of dollars per hour for a tutor, my students were able to access a tutor any time of day, absolutely free.
Wow. Okay. And I love that you mentioned that you're having a revision session one-on-one with the student. So maybe you're going a little bit deeper into the questions that they have, where you're providing that kind of insight that they prefer the more human element. Well, the students are interacting with the AI version of yourself. So we're going to kind of back up from there, because I think that's like Chat GPT 4.5 or beyond, right? And we'll chat about later. But if I'm a newbie to this whole thing. I've heard about Chat GPT. I really am like overwhelmed as a math teacher. I have so much to plan. So you know what I do? I usually just go by the textbook and I just go through my lessons. And I heard about this, whole thing of project-based learning, more active experiences in Chat GPT. So maybe you could take me through, where would I start if I want to plan some kind of project around it?
Yeah, fantastic, Carl. I mean, so what we're going to do, because it's being recorded, and we're going to release the video as well as the audio, is I'm going to give in like an introduction to what's called prompt engineering. And prompt
Hmm.
engineering is how do we speak to ChatGPT so that it produces a fantastic output. Essentially, a prompt is like the recipe that we give to a chef. And if the recipe has all the steps and is really clear and is really sequential, then the meal tastes delicious. If the recipe is written on the back of a piece of paper and it's missing a few steps, then the cake might not rise and it won't be nearly as delicious. So what we're hoping to do in the next 10, 15 minutes is to demonstrate how teachers and educators can use ChatGPT, write effective prompts to design lessons and project-based learning opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. I really like that analogy. And I don't, even if I had the perfect recipe, I think I might still screw up the cake. So I can't wait till AI actually bakes a cake for you as well.
And that's the beautiful thing, is that as I start sharing my screen to ChatGPT, even if the cake comes out of the oven initially a bit burnt, we can ask ChatGPT to make some tweaks and some changes and to put it back into the oven. So it's important to remember that the first thing that ChatGPT spits out for you is not the last, and that you can interact with it. People will notice that I'm using ChatGPT 4, which costs $20 a month. It's 10 times more powerful than the free version of ChatGPT. It's like the
Hmm.
difference from a motorized scooter up into a Harley Davidson. And it's really, really much more creative. It's a much better critical thinker. It connects
Hmm.
with the internet, so you can get real world, up to date articles and videos and information. It's an incredible investment. The price of, one cup of coffee a week will cover
Hmm.
your monthly Chat GP4 subscription. So I'd really
Yeah.
recommend people do upgrade.
All right. So, okay. So let's say I got Chat GPT 4. I'm a math teacher. And where do I start? Do I just give you potentially something I'm teaching and try to devise a project out of it?
Yeah, fantastic. So the most important first step is that we need to tell ChatGPT who we want it to be. We need to give it a character that we want it to inhabit. Every conversation we start with ChatGPT, it's like a newborn baby in the world. They've got no
Hmm.
idea about our world. There's no context. There's no understanding. So we need to give ChatGPT context. And I like to say act as an expert. And we can act as an expert mathematics teacher, physics teacher, physiotherapist,
Hmm.
landscape architect. For our discussion today, we want to say act as an expert mathematics teacher
Hmm.
who is expert in designing, what should we say, engaging and relevant
Hmm.
lessons for disengaged or disengaged teenagers. Do we like the sound of that?
Yeah, no, I like the sound of that, because I think it's getting more at the challenges, that they might be facing, rather than this new kind of concept of learning experiences they might never have designed.
And I've just gone through and I'm just changing some of the language. Act as an expert mathematics teacher who is adept in designing engaging and relevant lessons. So changing the language expert, adept, efficient, giving AI this really clear instruction about who it is and what we want it to do means that it will produce really good outcomes for us. So the
Mm,
first step, we've given a ChatGPT its role, its character, an expert mathematics teacher.
mm.
Now, what's our plan? What's this teacher trying to do, Kyle? What are they planning?
Well, okay, so I've been teaching algebraic functions, and usually, I provide students a little bit with the understanding of variables and how to put those into formulas and make sure they use the right formulas. So we have a couple sometimes problems in the textbook, but I just really want to make it more kind of engaging for them.
Yeah, great. So step one is we've given it a character. Step two,
Mhm,
we need to tell it what we want it to do. What's its task? What do we want ChatGPT to help us make or create or analyze or build? And it
mm.
sounds as though here we say your task is to design a 3-week unit of work. What was the topic we were talking about?
Algebraic functions.
3-week unit of work on algebraic functions that is connected
Mhm,
to the real world and builds a solid understanding or a strong understanding in my students about their applications. So that instruction there is really, really clear that it's a 3-week unit of work. If we wanted to be
mhm,
even more clear, we could tell it exactly how many lessons that involved. So a
mhm,
3-week unit of work, we could say it's might be 12 lessons, and we could say of 50 minutes each. So the more
mhm,
specifics, the more clear we
mhm,
can be with ChatGPT. This is where you need to invest the time as an educator, not in the sitting there planning out the lesson yourself necessarily, but in writing
mhm,
a really effective prompt. So
mhm.
12 lessons of 50 minutes each on algebraic functions that are connected to the real world and will help my students be able to apply them.
Okay, yeah, I like that what you mentioned about specificity. And is that just because if you're not specific, you're gonna have to go back and ask it later after it produces something?
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about when we ask for help, the more clear we can be about what we want help with, we get a
Mm,
better outcome. It's like if you go to a doctor and you just tell them, "Oh, my knee is a bit sore." Well,
mm,
that sore, we can be much more specific about where that soreness is. Is it at a particular point? And so we need to be the same with ChatGPT in being as clear as crystal and as obvious and as direct as possible, so that we don't leave
mhm,
ambiguity. If we leave
mm,
ambiguity, then ChatGPT will try and fill in the gaps for us, and that's
mm,
called hallucinating, where it'll
mm,
produce an output that's very different to what we're looking for, just because it's trying to make sense of what we had asked of it.
mm. Okay, okay, great. And I'm sure the more prompts like this it answers as an expert mathematics teacher, maybe it starts to build up an understanding of what you're looking for.
Well, that's it. When we say act as an expert mathematics teacher, that's plugging into the part of the large language model that is all about things that mathematics teachers in the world have ever spoken or written or said. So instead
Mm,
of just looking at the entire collection of information on ChatGPT, trillions and trillions of words, we're just asking it now to focus in on the billion words that have been said and written by expert mathematics teachers. So it's
mm.
it's giving it a much more defined boundary around which language to look for.
All right, now is it time to see the magic
Yeah,
at
I think
play?
I think we could say that we want it to complete the task in certain steps. We could say, first of all, we want it to research best practice in this area. Then we want it to consider applications that are specific to California or Australia.
Hmm.
But I think for our purposes today, running this prompt will yield a delicious cake of sorts. Let's have a look.
Hmm. All right, so for those who are not watching this and just listening, what we're seeing is the overall prompt, and then week by week breaking down in big headings in terms of, and are these the lessons, do we think? Introduction to algebraic functions, understanding variables.
Yeah, we told it that there was going to be, it's 3 weeks and there was 12
Hmm.
lessons. So it's figured out
Hmm.
there's 4 lessons per week. It's already straight away diving into real world examples of mobile phone plans and game scoring systems. The
Hmm.
homework is finding an example of a function in everyday life.
Okay.
It's got interactive quizzes and graphing software connected to the real world, like economics and physics.
Hmm.
Uh, The second week seems to be diving deeper, as it says itself, into functions and then
Mhm.
introducing them to quadratic functions and engineering and architecture. So we can see that it's really meeting that need of connecting these functions and equations to real world problems, business optimization.
Mm.
What else is it saying? Loans and investments,
Hmm.
radioactive decay, population growth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if we could take one of those concepts, like you mentioned, loans and investments. Um, what was the other one? Some business model or something, business
Yeah.
optimization problem. Yeah. And I'm wondering if we take one of those because, we might be looking at it and saying, okay, well, that's a real world scenario. How can we frame this whole thing in the context of students addressing that? Even though week 1 and 2 seems like it's a lot of learning the content that they need. Could we then kind of take one of those and say, develop what you've just developed, but around this kind of concept?
Absolutely. I think sometimes when we produce this work in ChatGPT, we start to think, wow, they all sound like fantastic ideas, but then how on earth do we create them? And the answer
Mhm.
is we ask AI to create them for them. So
Hmm.
AI responds really well to feedback. So for example, we can say we could say week 2, lesson 4, which was functions in finance.
Hmm.
Week 2, lesson 4 is fantastic. And then we say to it, can you expand on your idea of, and I'm just copy and pasting in,
Hmm.
applying functions to financial contexts, calculate interest using different functions. And what I'm going to ask ChatGPT to do is create a full lesson plan, activities, and tasks for me to use with my students. And then
Hmm.
what we're getting the robot to do here is to do that heavy lifting, to
Hmm.
dive further into its initial output to us.
Okay. Oh, so then this breaks it down a little bit more in the minutia that you might be considering it if you're doing that lesson.
Totally, from what the lesson objectives are to what you're going to need beforehand, how you break down the activities, and to those who can't see, it's producing a really step-by-step lesson plan that you could probably look at recess as you had your coffee and wander into
Hmm.
class and to teach a really, really effective lesson.
Okay, great. So I think, in terms of first steps, if I'm looking at this as a math teacher, I might say, hey, in the very least, what this could do for me is plan out, my lessons and, help cut a lot of time off of that. And now I am looking at it, and that's, this particular, there's an activity, I guess, that's related to each of these lessons. It's more real world based, but I'm kind of thinking this now. I'm taking off my frame of a mathematics teacher and more into kind of a project-based consultant. And I'm thinking, how do we develop? This is all about algebraic functions, but now what if we wanted to develop, a longer term kind of project out of this?
Mm. And again, we can get the robot to help us with that. So we've
Mm,
acknowledged that some of its ideas are fantastic, but yeah, as you're saying, we want to turn this into a more project-based learning experience. So we would ask the robot to do that. Now we'd ask it to act as an expert project project-based learning designer
mm-hmm,
and turn this unit of work into an engaging um, project-based learning experience.
mm-hmm,
So the important thing for people listening is that you need to have a dialogue with ChatGPT. You can tell
mm,
it what it's doing well. You can say what you like and what you don't like, and it responds really well to that feedback, telling it what's good and what's bad, just like our students would respond to that feedback from us. And so see your interactions with ChatGPT as a dialogue rather than the
mm-hmm.
first thing it spits out is all you're going to get. Um,
Yeah, I love how it starts too. Just transforming this is a great way to build engagement, right? Which is our initial challenge is engaging our students.
Totally. And because we've got ChatGPT 4, its working memory is longer. What that means is it's remembering all those things we said to it previously. So everything that's been said so far in this conversation, it's now taking that into account as it's having its discussion. In the
Hmm.
free version of ChatGPT, that working memory is much, much smaller and it can forget things you were talking about 5 minutes ago. ChatGPT 4, you'll be able to have a conversation of many, many thousands of words and it will still be able to draw on what you said to it initially.
Yeah, I love the title too, function junction, right? I mean, sometimes I spend 15, 20 minutes in an ideation session just having people come up with a fancy title for their project. And this did it in seconds.
Totally. And one of yours and mine mentors, Stephen Harris, he loves using ChatGPT to give him 4 or 5 choices. So
Hmm.
really good at giving, five for you to choose from. And then you can tell it
Yeah.
which ones you like the most and which ones you do. So it's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. And I might back up there too. Yeah. And say, give me, in terms of algebraic functions, turn what you had above, give me 5 project ideas. And
Fantastic.
with
Yeah.
driving questions, right?
And
Um,
that's when we as expert educators get to go, oh yeah, that will resonate with my students. So
hmm,
that there's still that human element of you need to use your professional judgment and all of the skills that you have to go, yeah, that will work for me in my context, or let's tweak that one a little bit. So we don't
hmm.
just take the first thing that the computer spits out at us, we tweak it, we finesse it. And that as pedagogues, as educators, is where our skills really do come in.
Hmm. Now let's say, I'm looking at this selfishly for my purposes and kind of the work that I do in consulting as well as what you do. And let's say we want to then give this to a math teacher and say, hey, look what I programmed in, ChatGPT to help you out. Can we copy that link and send it to them, or do they have to have ChatGPT as well?
That's a really great question to ask. So this entire conversation, I can share the link to that chat,
Hmm.
and not only will they be able to see it, but they'll be able to start and continue the conversation with ChatGPT, but on their device. So they could take it further. They could tweak what it said.
Hmm.
A teacher in Mississippi could send this to a teacher in Missouri and get them to make some changes. They will have to have the subscription to ChatGPT 4. If
Okay.
you have the free version, you could still see the chat that we had, but you couldn't engage with it or pick it up where we left off.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. I mean, I think already this is enough to kind of chew on for kind of the newbie to ChatGPT. And I thought it might be appropriate to chat a bit about where you see kind of the future of this going. Like this is kind of like the very bare bones, version of usage. How do you foresee this playing out in the future in classrooms?
Yeah, I like to tell people to think about when computers first came out. And my first interaction with computers, it was like green text on a black screen. It was some frog jumping on lily pads. It was super simplistic. That's where AI and ChatGPT is now. And in a few short years, it's going to start looking like Windows XP. It's going to make those quantum leaps. So the AI that we have now is the worst it will ever be. We will have to do the most heavy lifting and the most inputting as humans. But already some schools around the world are using ChatGPT to teach their students the fundamentals in literacy and numeracy. That's being taught by an AI teacher, and the kids are interacting and getting feedback in real time from that AI teacher, and it's freeing up the humans to be learning guides to teach the students how to do public speaking, how to do conflict resolution, how to build tables and chairs from IKEA, how to cook a meal.
Hmm.
It's freeing up the humans to do the soft skills, the teamwork, the collaboration, the things that we
Hmm.
know to be truly important. So I
Hmm.
think that education is fast shifting to ones where teachers will be learning guides, not required to transmit endless knowledge that's irrelevant as soon as it leaves their lips, into
Hmm.
teaching young people the skills that we all know as society are most important for them to harness.
Hmm. And do you know where that's taking place? The example you just gave?
Yeah, that's at a school in Austin in the States.
Okay.
But I know and I've seen examples of other schools around the world doing this too. And certainly from my own context, I'm having the AI tutor in economics teach young people some of these concepts at their own pace, at their own level of interest, using a metaphor that's unique to that learner's passions. I'm
Hmm.
using that in my classrooms too. And I'm seeing the profound improvement in engagement and attention that having an individualized teacher for every
Hmm.
student at their point of need can create.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we were chatting about this earlier, and I think it's appropriate. There's enough that people can get to at least kind of experiment on their own with Chat GPT 3.5 or 4 or whatever version they want to interact with. But in terms of diving deeper, let's say someone wants to dive deeper, are you working at all with schools, with teachers, with businesses?
Yeah, so what people have seen today or heard today is just a really short introduction to prompt engineering. And I've been running workshops with schools and educators around the world and businesses too about how they can use AI, not just in an educational setting, but in order to augment and enhance their work, no matter what the field is, from finance to law to marketing and communications. I'm available for workshops and professional development, and that's some really exciting work that I'm involved in at the moment, and happy to speak to anyone who's curious to hear more about how I could work with them to use AI in their context.
I love hearing this because, a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want ideas for my classroom and how to make it more student centered." But, part of that is these kind of people like yourself and other people on the podcast are always looking as well to like do more trainings, do more workshops, branch out, get in the consulting world, be an entrepreneur is what I call it. So it's great to hear an example of like you doing that, and you're working with, I think, a local business there as well.
That's right. A local business who's recognizing that to get the competitive advantage, harnessing AI tools is incredibly important. We see the World Economic Forum talking about the most desirable skills in the next 5 years. They're around AI and big tech and data. These are the ways that businesses can become more efficient, can do more with their resources, and ultimately be more successful. So the world feels like it's moving really, really quickly, and it is shifting fast. But I find the best way to deal with that sense that things feel like they're speeding away is to learn how to harness the tools. With effective instruction, none of these AI tools are impossible to learn.
All right. Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to leave it with a couple questions. Feel free to answer these in your best knowledge possible. This is a question that I heard on a podcast recently, and I suggest everyone listen to Spotify. It's the AI Education Daily Brief. You can look it up. But the question was, will AI be the end of humanity? And they asked a lot of people this question. First, I want to hear your take, and I'll tell you the percentage of people who thought it might be.
I might have read that same article too, so I'll try and not bias my own thoughts with it. But I think we should listen to experts and academics in the AI area. So many of us have only recently started thinking about AI, whereas people have been researching this for decades. I think there are incredible concerns that we need to be aware of with AI, and that our governments need to act quickly to make sure that there are protections in place. AI's ability to complete many, many tasks better than humans is already here
Mm,
now. With every single iteration and upgrade and improvement, there are predictions that so many jobs, I think it was up to 90% of human jobs, can be automated in the next sort of 50 years, or it might have even been a shorter time frame with AI
mhm.
on its current trajectory. And I think they were conservative estimates. So how do we ensure that people have a rewarding life, that they can do work that they find to be valuable to them and their community? And AI can do lots of the jobs that we find boring and find mundane and that don't bring us joy. But we need to make sure that as we do this and as we embrace these tools, that we don't do away with the things that we know to be deeply important as humans: the love, the care, the empathy, the community building.
I love that answer, and I really resonate with what you said around kind of offloading the stuff we don't like to do. I just recently, because I'm in the process of writing a book, and I need these alt text for every image that is in the book. And I started just thinking of these myself, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I hate this. And I was staring at a computer screen for 2 hours doing 5 images. I'm like, why don't I just give that over to ChatGPT? And like, yeah, within seconds, way better than I could have done. And now I can spend more time, doing the things I love. So yeah, I like that
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah, there's big strides to be made. And but even in that work that you're doing, graphic designers are sitting there worried about what does that mean for them and their work. And what I would
Mm,
say, around redundancies or skill loss is it's those of us who can harness AI to augment and improve their skills that will find ourselves protected from that shifting world. And
mm.
so I've got friends who are graphic designers that are using AI to do their work, to enhance their work. So just like teachers using AI to plan lessons, there's still that expert human element that comes in as well to tweak and adjust what the AI produces. And it's really important that I think we upskill our young people in how to use AI and these
Mm.
tools. It would be not dissimilar to if we never taught our young people how to use the internet or computers in the decades before. Because we did teach them how to use the internet and computers, they were able to thrive in a changing world.
I like that. And I think a statistic that resonates is you're more likely to be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI and is in the process of doing that than AI itself. So I think maybe that's with the teaching field as well, as you mentioned. You've got to upskill yourself and understand how to use it, because even though educators, we have a shortage, we have a lot of people leaving the profession. We also too have a lot of talented young people who want to get on board, and they're going to be using AI.
Yeah, and I truly believe that a large reason that teachers are leaving the workforce is that the work has become too mundane, too
mm,
boring, doesn't feel worthy. And AI has that ability, as we've been talking on this call, to make learning experiences tailored and unique to each of our learners, and then that we as teachers can then do the character building, the empathy and caring work that we find to be so much more profound and valuable and rewarding to our sense of purpose. And maybe that would be keeping educators in the field for longer if they didn't have to stay up late at night planning yet another worksheet on algebraic
mm,
functions.
yeah. All right. Some people do love that though. It's interesting. I know someone who loves assessment and loves creating rubrics. So I'm like, okay, I used to offload that on them, but now I offload on Chat GPT. So my last question is, if you had to have, build an AI bot to help you out with something that you absolutely hate the most, um, what would that be around?
Yeah, I think the biggest improvement in AI for me as a teacher will come as it becomes better at reading text. At the
Mm,
moment, AI is not very good at reading handwritten text that we've scanned in. And as I was saying before, I find myself working in this broken model where we have to test and assess and read handwritten student work
mm,
and provide feedback on that. As AI becomes more powerful at reading handwritten text, its ability to mark work and to grade work and to provide timely feedback on work will be really profound, not just for me as an economics teacher, but I think of all my English teaching colleagues who sometimes the thought of reading another 30 student essays is perhaps the straw on the camel's back.
yeah, definitely be the straw on my back. All right. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for this conversation, and we'll put the links in the show notes, as well as we are going to be hosting some kind of webinar for everyone who's listening to this. We don't know exactly when it will be. It will probably be within the next 3 weeks to a month. By the time this episode comes out, we'll have more information around that. But yeah, really excited to dive in this work together with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carl. Been great to chat.